these things. And when African Americans said, who are we? What are we a part of? If we're not part of this country, who are we a part of? What are we a part of? African Americans tended to say, we are part of a global diaspora of black people who were kidnapped and enslaved and deposited on slave ships from Brazil to Central America to the Caribbean to the US, etc. More than that, we are part of people who really are struggling everywhere, who don't have any real sense of self outside of our sense of struggle. What do I mean by that? If you were African and brought to the Americas, you were stripped of your right to speak your native language. If you it didn't matter if you were from a tribe in Benin or if you were from East Africa, you were forced to stop speaking your language. And deliberately, they mixed up tribes so people couldn't speak a common language, so they would be unable to organize slave rebellions. That was a deliberate policy. You did not know where you came from, who your ancestry, those ties were broken. So where did the common identity of African Americans come from? African Americans are one of the few people on earth who do not trace their sense of belonging and identity to ancestry. By that I mean ethnicity. To that, my people came from China, we've been speaking the same language for 6,000 years. My people come from India, a part of India, we've been speaking the same language for 6,000 years. My people come from this part of Europe where they speak this language, and we have none of that. None of that. Because we didn't know. Our sense of identity, who we are, where we come from, was, are you willing to stand up and fight and love one another in this struggle or not? If you are, you're part of us. That's who we are. So in terms of identity, African American identity is really based on this sense of humanity and commitment to struggle for justice. That's really what it is at its essence. It's not history. And that's different. That's different. Now, America claims it's, the exceptional place. People come from all over the world seeking the American dream, came through Ellis Island. So there is another American myth about this is the nation on the hill, the place that God intended, this is heaven on earth, and like everyone got there. Except that's not the African American narrative at all. About American exceptionalism, it's a different kind of American exceptionalism, you might say, that I trace my identity from. I just want to say that for starters. September 11th, today. When September 11th happened, I was in New York. I was working in New York. And I helped create, when I was in government, a coalition, 120 churches, created a CDC in Harlem called Harlem Community Congregations Incorporated. And I went to the ministers, tongue-in-cheek, saying, after September 11th, saying, I know you all have been preaching a lot of funerals since the planes went into the World Trade Center. I just want to know how you're feeling about it. And the reason I asked that question was because if you drove from New York through New York City after September 11th, there were yellow ribbons everywhere, and that symbolized your, solidarity with the people who suffered from the plane crash and this and that. And you saw yellow ribbons all throughout Manhattan until you got to Harlem. No yellow ribbons in Harlem. That's a black area. No yellow ribbons in the Bronx. No yellow ribbons. And so I was asking, the ministers from Harlem, how are you feeling about this? And they said, do not talk to us. No, we are not mourning September 11th. No, we are not. And I said, why not? And they said, we've been doing funeral after funeral, day in, day out, because of crack, because of AIDS, because of these kids killing each other every single day. The mayor didn't care. The president didn't come here and help. Nobody has cared. But as soon as some investment bankers in Wall Street and the Twin Towers get hit, suddenly it's a national catastrophe. We're mad. We're mad. We're not mourning, we're mad. That was their response. I heard this a lot in black communities. And it didn't mean no one cares about loss of life in the World Trade Center. But guess what? 50,000 black kids a year were killing each other during these same years as part of the drug wars. 50,000 a year. United States lost 55,000 soldiers in the entire Vietnam War. In 1 year, 50,000 killed on the streets of the US, children killing each other, and no national outcry. That's an African American perspective I want to offer. It is not the dominant American perspective. Frantz Fanon was a major influential figure